My twin brother spent $80,000 of my student loans on parties and trips. But when my parents ghosted me after promising to pay me back, I sued them and forced them to return every cent. What happened next destroyed them all. I'm 23 years old, work at an engineering internship that barely pays enough for rent and food, and 6 months ago, I discovered that my parents basically ruined my financial life before it even started. I mean, when I say they screwed me over, it's not an exaggeration, it's literal. They took out a $170,000 student loan in my name and gave half of it to my twin brother so he could party and travel, while I was killing myself studying. I still can't believe it when I say it out loud, you know? Like it sounds like something that would happen in a bad movie. But no, this happened to me. I guess I should start from the beginning, so all of this makes sense. Tristan and I are twins, but we couldn't be more different. I was always the nerd, the responsible one, the one who got good grades and worried about the future. Tristan was, I don't know, the life of the party, the good-looking one who always had a girlfriend since he was 14, the one who did the bare minimum in school and somehow still passed. Our parents, Helen and Anthony, always told us they loved us equally, that they didn't have favorites, all that shit parents say. But looking back, I should have seen it coming. There were always signs. Like when Tristan wanted something new, my parents would buy it for him without thinking twice. But when I asked for something for school, like a better scientific calculator or books, we had to think about it. We had to see if the budget allowed it. When we finished high school, I was clear that I was going to college. I wanted to study mechanical engineering. I had good grades. I had applied for scholarships. The whole process. Tristan said college wasn't for him, that he wanted to be a model, that he already had contacts at an agency. My parents supported him completely, said that everyone had to follow their own path, that it was okay. I thought, well, at least they'll be able to focus on helping me with college since Tristan isn't going. Naive me, honestly. The thing is that when I started college, my parents told me they had saved some money for my studies, but it wasn't enough to cover everything, so we would have to take out student loans. They explained that they were going to be co-signers, and that basically we were going to take out what was necessary to cover tuition, books, housing, the normal stuff. We did the calculations and estimated it would be like $85,000 total for the 4 years. It's not a small amount of money, obviously, but it wasn't crazy for an engineering degree either. I was okay with it. I understood it was an investment in my future, and that I would have to pay it back later. I signed the papers my parents gave me. I trusted them completely because, well, they're my parents. Why wouldn't I trust them? During the 4 years of college, I worked part-time when I could. I focused on my studies. I graduated with a good GPA. Meanwhile, Tristan was in the city, supposedly building his modeling career. I saw him on social media all the time, traveling, at parties, in expensive clothes, at expensive restaurants. I thought, well, I guess the modeling is going well for him, or maybe my parents are helping him a little, but it wasn't my problem. I was busy trying to survive college and looking for internships for after graduation. I graduated like 8 months ago. I got an internship that doesn't pay much, but it's experience. I live in a small apartment with 2 roommates, and I was mentally preparing myself to start paying my student loans. I knew I had 6 months of grace after graduating before the payments started, so I was making budgets, seeing how much I would have to pay each month. According to my calculations, with $85,000 in debt, I would be paying like $800 a month, which was tight but manageable if I lived super frugal. And then that damn email from the bank arrived. It was a Friday morning. I was having coffee before heading to work, checking my email casually. I see an email from the bank with the subject, "Your student loan summary," and I think, well, here it is. It's official now. I open it and I see the amount. $170,284.50. I just stared at the screen like an idiot. Like, this has to be a mistake. I refreshed the page like 5 times. I closed the email and opened it again. Nothing changed. The number was still there, mocking me. I literally felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach. My hands started shaking. I called the bank immediately. I didn't even care about being late to work. The representative confirmed that, yes, that was the correct amount of my student loan, that the loan had been dispersed in several parts during my 4 years of college, and that everything was in my name with my parents as co-signers. I told her there had to be a mistake, that it was supposed to be like half that. She told me there was no error in her system, and that if I had questions about how the money was used, I had to talk to the co-signers. I hung up and immediately called my mother. She didn't answer. I called my father. He didn't answer either. I sent them text messages that basically said, "I need to talk to you now. It's urgent." Like an hour passed. I was already at work, but I couldn't concentrate on absolutely anything. I just stared at my phone waiting for them to respond. Finally, my mother called me. I answered, and before she could say hello, I was already saying, "What the hell happened with my student loans? The bank says I owe $170,000. This has to be a mistake." There was a long silence. Too long. And that's when I knew it wasn't a mistake. My mother said, "Zachary, honey, we need to talk about this in person, not over the phone." And I told her, "No, we're going to talk about this right now. Explain to me why I owe double what I was supposed to." Another silence. And then I heard my father in the background saying something. My mother sighed and said, "Okay, yes, we took out the full loan." I asked her, "What does the full loan mean? It was supposed to be $85,000. And she said, "Well, we took out a little more because we needed the money for other things." I swear I felt like my brain was going to explode. Other things. What other things? My mother started with how they had expenses, that the economy was difficult, that they needed help with some bills. I told her that wasn't my problem, that loan was for my education, not for their personal expenses. My father got on the phone and started getting defensive, saying that they were the co-signers, that it was also their responsibility, that they had the right to use part of the money if they needed it. I was yelling at this point. I didn't care that I was at work. I told them to explain to me exactly what that extra money had been spent on, and that's when they dropped the bomb. My mother, crying already, because that's how she is. She always cries when confronted, said they had given money to Tristan. I asked how much. $80,000. $80,000. To my brother. For what? I asked, although I already knew the answer. For his modeling career, my father said, so he could establish himself, do networking, have the right clothes and presence. Basically, they were telling me they had stolen $80,000 from my future to finance my brother's fantasy of being a model. I hung up on them. I literally hung up the phone and left work. I told my boss I had a family emergency, that I needed to leave. I went to my apartment and basically broke down. I didn't cry immediately. I was too angry to cry. I just sat on my bed staring at the wall, trying to process what I had just discovered. All those trips of Tristan's, all those expensive clothes, those restaurants, those parties. I paid for all of that without knowing it. While I was eating ramen and working part-time to have some extra money, my brother was spending my money living like he was rich. I spent the whole weekend researching. I looked up everything about student loans, about fraud, about my legal options. I discovered that technically, since I signed the papers, the loan is in my name, and I'm responsible, regardless of what the money was spent on. My parents as co-signers are also legally responsible, but that didn't change the fact that if we didn't pay, my credit would be the one destroyed first. I also discovered that what my parents did could be considered fraud, but proving that and fighting it legally would be expensive and complicated. On Monday, I went to my parents' house. I didn't tell them I was coming. I just showed up after work. My mother opened the door and I could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen. I went in, and my father was in the living room. I told them to sit down and explain everything to me, with details. My father started talking, trying to justify himself, saying that Tristan is our son too, that we wanted to give him the same opportunities as you, that we thought it was fair. I told him there was nothing fair about taking out a loan in my name to give him money. My mother crying was saying she was sorry, that they never thought it would be such a big problem, that they thought they could help me pay it back later. I asked them directly, Where is that money now? Silence. I said, if you gave Tristan $80,000, where is that money? Have him give it back. My father said Tristan had already spent it, that he had invested it in his career. Invested. That word infuriated me. I told him to check Tristan's Instagram, that all his posts were of him on beaches, in clubs, on trips to Europe. That's not investing in a career, that's squandering money. My mother kept crying, saying that Tristan is young, that he was enjoying his life, that they couldn't control what he spent the money on once they gave it to him. I gave them an ultimatum right there. I told them they had to pay to me back those $80,000 or find a way to pay that portion of the loan because I wasn't going to destroy my financial life paying for my brother's lifestyle. My father got angry, told me I was being selfish, that we're family and family helps each other. I told him helping is one thing, stealing is another. My mother was begging me not to make this more difficult, that we would find a solution, that they just needed time. Then I went to confront Tristan. He lives in an apartment that, I now realize, is probably also paid for with my money. I knocked on the door, and when he opened it, he had that typical smile of his, all casual and relaxed. I told him we needed to talk. We went in and I asked him directly if he knew that Mom and Dad had given him $80,000 from my student loan. He shrugged and said yes. He knew. He didn't even try to deny it or seem guilty. I asked him what he had spent that money on. He told me on things for his career, on professional photos, on clothes, on trips to make contacts. I said, Tristan, your social media is basically a party diary. I don't see any modeling career there. He got defensive, saying I didn't understand how that industry worked, that you need to network, that you need to have a certain lifestyle to be taken seriously. I told him that money was mine, that now I had to pay all of that he had basically stolen my future. And you know what he told me? He told me I was always the academic favorite, that Mom and Dad always focused on me and my education, that he deserved something too. I couldn't believe it. He was turning the situation around like he was the victim. I asked him if he was going to pay me back the money. He laughed. He literally laughed and said he didn't have $80,000, that he had already spent it. I asked him how long it would take him to pay me. He told me he couldn't, that he was barely starting his career, that he didn't have that kind of money. I left there feeling worse than when I arrived. My own twin, brother, the person I shared a womb with, who I grew up with, didn't feel even a little bit of remorse. For him it was normal. It was his right to have that money. I drove back to my apartment, and that's when I completely broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried since I was a kid. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the betrayal. My family, the people I'm supposed to trust most in the world, had stabbed me in the back without thinking twice. I spent the next few days researching lawyers. I didn't have money for one, but I got some free consultations. Most told me the same thing. I had a case, but it would be difficult and expensive. However, one lawyer told me I could file a civil lawsuit against my parents for fraud, and that if I won, they would have to pay not only the money, but also my legal costs. I decided to try one last time with my parents before going that route. I sent them an email, very formal, very cold. I told them they had 2 weeks to present me with a concrete payment plan for the $80,000 they had given Tristan, or I would proceed with legal action. My mother called me crying, saying she couldn't believe I was threatening to sue them, that how could I do that to my own parents? I told her how could they do this to me? My father got on the phone, and for the first time he sounded less defensive and more scared. He asked me if I was serious. I told him completely serious. I hung up. 4 days later, I received an email from my father with a payment plan. They committed to paying me $1,500 a month until completing the $80,000. It would take them like 4.5 years, but it was something. I responded that I accepted, but that I needed a written and signed agreement, something legally binding. My father agreed. We went to a notary. We signed a document where they committed to paying me that amount monthly. The first 3 months they paid. I received the money punctually, on the first of each month. I started thinking that maybe things would work out, that my family had learned their lesson and that they were trying to repair the damage. But then the 4th month came, and I didn't receive the payment. I sent them a message. They didn't respond. I called. They didn't answer. I sent an email. Nothing. A week later, my mother finally responded, saying they had had unexpected expenses and couldn't pay that month, but they would make it up the following month. The next month, they didn't pay either. Or the next one, they basically ghosted me. They blocked my number, stopped responding to emails. When I went to their house, they wouldn't open the door, even though I knew they were inside because I saw their cars. They had paid me $4,500 of the $80,000 and then disappeared. It was at that moment I realized they really didn't care, that they thought after paying a couple of months I would give up or forgive them. I hired the lawyer. It cost me. I had to borrow money from a friend for the retainer, but I did it. We sued my parents for fraud and breach of contract. The legal process was a nightmare. My parents hired their own lawyer. Tristan wasn't even legally involved because my parents had given him the money. He hadn't taken it directly from me. The extended family found out and basically everyone took my parents' side. My uncles, my cousins, everyone told me I was being ridiculous, that family doesn't sue family, that I had to forgive and forget. One aunt told me it was my fault for not reviewing the papers I signed. Another uncle told me I was a bad son and that I should be grateful that my parents helped me go to college. The case took like 5 months to resolve. During that time, I didn't talk to anyone in my family. I focused on my work. I tried to live as cheaply as possible so I could start paying my real portion of the student loan when the mandatory payments started. It was the loneliest period of my life. The holidays, Christmas, my birthday, I spent everything alone or with friends. My roommate invited me to spend Thanksgiving with his family because he knew I had nowhere to go. Finally, my parents' lawyer proposed a settlement. My parents would pay the full $80,000, plus my legal costs, which had been like $8,000. I would receive the money in a lump sum within 2 months. They would take out a personal loan to pay it. In exchange, I would withdraw the lawsuit and sign that I wouldn't sue them again for this matter. My lawyer recommended I accept. He told me that if we went to trial, maybe we'd win, but it would take more time and more money. I accepted the agreement. 2 months later, I received a bank transfer for $88,000. The first thing I did was pay the student loan, specifically the $80,000 extra that should never have been there. I paid my lawyer. I returned the money I had borrowed from my friend, and suddenly, I had exactly the debt I was supposed to have from the beginning. Approximately $85,000. It's still a lot of money, but it's my debt, for my education, not for my brother's vacations in Cancun. I haven't spoken to my parents since the agreement was signed. That was like 2 months ago. Tristan sent me a message a few weeks ago saying I had destroyed the family, that mom and dad are devastated, that they had to take out a loan they can barely pay, that I'm selfish. I blocked his number too. The truth is, I don't have family anymore, not in the traditional sense. I have roommates who are more considerate of me than my own blood. I have friends from work who invite me to do things. I have a boss who's considering me for a full-time position when my internship ends. Sometimes I feel guilty, you know? Like I think, maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should have let this go. Maybe destroying my relationship with my parents and my brother wasn't worth it. But then I remember they had no problem destroying my financial future without even telling me. I remember Tristan laughing when I told him he had no money to pay me back. I remember my parents ghosting me after promising to pay me. And then I don't feel so guilty anymore. Last week, I finally established an official payment plan for my student loan. It's $897 a month for 10 years. It's exactly what I had calculated from the beginning. It's manageable, it's fair, it's mine. And I guess that's enough for now.